So today we are going to swap out the throttle bodies on this SV1000S. The secondary throttle valve motor is stripped on these, so we're going to replace it with some that aren't stripped. So the first thing is going to take off this airbox. So this bike doesn't have the snorkel on it, so we're just going to go ahead and take off the top airbox, 6 Phillips head screws. Wait, correction, 7 Phillips head screws, one here in the back. Let's go ahead and remove the air filter. So now we've got to get the lower part of the airbox off, and there are post clamps holding on each of the intakes to the throttle body, so that's what we're going to get off next with a long Phillips head screwdriver. While we're over here, there are a couple of items plugged in to the lower part of the airbox. There's a sensor right here. Push down on that, slide it off. That's good. There's also a hose that connects under this filter here. The pair valve normally plugs in here. The pair valve's been disabled on this, so we don't have to worry about it. Got an air temp sensor over in the other side. I'll get that one real quick. And that should be it. See if we can get it off. Alright, okay, yeah, I've got a vacuum line right here on the back side. Small vacuum line right here. There's that. It slides right off, okay. Okay, so now we can see our throttle bodies, and what's going on here is this little guy here is stripped. Kind of hear it. So click there. I got the replacements from a salvage yard, so I'm going to go and see what all is included and see what all we're going to keep, what we're going to get rid of off of here, and go from there. We've got our sensors here, so we've got these 3 plugs, this one here, this one, and one more down there somewhere, this guy here maybe, and then basically just the throttle bodies themselves. We got a vacuum line, a couple of vacuum lines that are cut we're gonna have to fix, but otherwise it's pretty good. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go ahead and unbolt the old one, lift it up, and go from there. Alright, so referencing the manual, it says to remove these plugs, which we were gonna do. We just weren't quite there yet. That is that. That should be everything disconnected. And we remove the throttle cables next, and the fuel line, and then it should just lift off. That's what the manual says. Trying to get this fuel line. There we go. There's the fuel line. You are going to have some fuel spillage when you remove the fuel line. That's just how they work. A lot. Okay, we'll loosen that guy. 12 millimeter. So the only thing holding these guys on really are hose clamps on the bottom as well, so we're going to do the same treatment and with our long screwdriver. We'll take the hose clamps off the bottom. Alright, so let's let this guy out. These things are supposed to just come off at this point. That is very obviously not the case. Alright, so I did some reading, and apparently it's very common for them to be stuck, so you're supposed to go screwdriver in down the edge, put some penetrating oil in, so that's what I'm going to try now. Put penetrating oil on there, we've let them sit for a little bit. I might not, maybe I don't have to use leverage on them, but let's see if they've loosened up enough. So, now going for assistance on the pry bar. Fine. Oh. Okay. So that's not fun. And it broke. Awesome. So yeah, it never came loose, and the bottom of the boot actually broke. Quite broken. Okay, so we are back. A few days later, we've got our replacement manifold, and I'm going to go ahead and get that installed real quick. And remove the screws from the old one. Use those screws there. So the first thing I'm going to do is this thing seals with an O-ring. I'm just going to hit a little bit of oil on this O-ring just to make sure it's nice and lubricated. It'll help it seal. It's kind of a standard thing I like to do with all O-rings. And there's an orientation marker on this thing. This has got an arrow pointing toward the front, which goes here. I'm going to place that guy where he goes. Start the screws. Since this does have an O-ring seal, you don't have to crank down on it. All you've got to do is get it just tight enough so that the O-ring's compressed and the intake is sealed. Going too tight, you can strip the connection to the head there. You don't want to do that. This is aluminum we're tightening into. And that's what the manifold looks like installed. It's the new one there. Compare that to the old one. One good comparison here. You can squeeze this guy and move it. That's how that's supposed to work. This one barely moves. So that's just what age does to parts like this. They get brittle, they get tough, they get hard. That's why the thing didn't want to come out. For the throttle bodies, I've got my replacement throttle body here. And now this was noted to be off of a 2003, which is the model that we're working on here. However, I can tell you very certainly that this is actually off of a later model. And the reason why is because the later model has an extra vacuum line here that connects these two lower ports in the orientation I've got here. These two ports are connected, and then there is an extra line that goes to, I believe, a charcoal canister for emissions. That doesn't, I don't have that canister on a 2003, so we're just blocking off those lines. So if you end up with a later model throttle body to replace yours, that is how you can adjust it. And we can't forget our clamp that holds the throttle body to the manifold. Almost did. This was stuck on the old manifold. And get that slid onto the new one here. And per the manual, the screw head needs to face toward the right side of the bike, so I've got that in place. So I'm actually going to put a little bit of motor oil on the inside of these guys to make sure they're nice and slick and that those throttle bodies slide right in. I'm going to do the same thing on the throttle bodies as well. So I've got my throttle body assembly cleaned up. I've got everything set up like I need, but I want to go ahead and first connect my throttle cables because they are a pain to get to once you've got everything installed. So we go and connect those first, and then we'll get the entire assembly installed. We'll put the pin through, and we're going to wrap the cable around the edge here. And that guy attaches at the bottom. Bracket. There we go. Alright. The cable is now attached. And it needs to be mounted. Let's just double check our throttle actuation here real quick. Yep. Here we go. That is working. Cool. The throttle cables are attached, and now we can go ahead and grease up the bottoms of these throttle bodies and slide them onto the manifolds. We've got some just standard motor oil here we're going to grease this up with. Let's give this a shot, and let's hope that I don't need a pry bar again, and let's hope nothing breaks. And I'm going to slide the rear cylinder in first, because that's the one we had issues with. Alright, I think that's set. Let's just check. Alright, so we're going to tighten up our two clamps. And you do want to make sure these clamps are seated properly in the channels where they ride on this manifold. Now, reconnect our lines. We got fuel here. There's a fun one. There we go. Throttle position. Go ahead and put this idle adjustment in the bracket. It just slides in real easy. This black plug here connects to my secondary throttle plate motor. And we got a couple plugs here. Here we go. Everybody's engaged. Alright. The last one we have is, where are you? That's the throttle position. There. So that is throttle bodies reinstalled. Turn the bike on, see what happens here. Okay, everything turned on properly. Okay, so now what we've got to do is double check our throttle position sensor, double check the adjustment on our throttle cables, and set the adjustment on the secondary throttle. So that's what we're going to do next.